Part 1. The perfect time rarely comes. Most people are waiting for the right moment, the right opportunity, the right feeling, the right amount of confidence. But what if the perfect moment never arrives? Hello, everyone. Before we begin, I'd like you to think about a simple question. Is there something you've been meaning to start? Perhaps it's a dream you've carried for years. A skill you've wanted to learn, a project you've been thinking about, or a change you've hoped to make in your life. Now here's another question. What's stopping you? For many people, the answer is surprisingly similar. I'm not ready yet. Maybe you've said those words before. Most people have. It's a very human feeling. We want to feel prepared before we begin. We want certainty before we take a step forward. We want confidence before we take a risk. That sounds reasonable, but life often works differently. Imagine standing at the edge of a path that disappears into a forest. You can see the first few steps, but you can't see the entire journey. The path curves. The trees block your view. The destination remains hidden. Many people stop there. They tell themselves they'll start walking once they can see the whole path. But that day never comes, because some paths only reveal themselves after we begin moving. Life is often like that. Clarity comes from movement, not before it. Now imagine two travelers. Both arrive at the same forest. Both have the same destination. Both feel uncertain. The first traveler decides to wait. Perhaps tomorrow the path will look clearer. Perhaps next week they will feel more confident. Perhaps next month they will know exactly what to do. The second traveler feels the same uncertainty, but takes one small step forward. Then another. Then another. Months later, one traveler is still waiting. The other has already discovered things that could never be seen from the starting point. The difference was not confidence. The difference was movement. Now here's something interesting. Many people believe confidence comes first. Then action follows. But often, confidence grows because of action. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. Very few people feel confident before their first ride. The beginning feels awkward, unsteady, uncomfortable. But each attempt teaches something new, and slowly confidence begins to grow. The same thing happens throughout life. People don't become confident and then start. They often start and then become confident. That's an important distinction. Now let's go a little deeper. One reason people wait so long is because they want certainty. And that's understandable. Uncertainty can feel uncomfortable. It asks us to move without guarantees. It asks us to trust a process we cannot fully see. Most people would rather avoid that feeling. But growth often lives inside uncertainty. Imagine a seed beneath the soil. The seed cannot see the sunlight. It cannot see the tree it will become. It cannot see the future at all. Yet it still begins to grow. Not because it has certainty, but because growth requires movement. Many meaningful things in life begin the same way. Without guarantees, without perfect conditions, without complete confidence. Now imagine a person who wants to learn a new language. They spend months reading about learning methods, watching videos, researching techniques, planning study schedules. All of that can be helpful. But eventually, there comes a moment when learning must begin, because some lessons can only be discovered through experience. At some point, preparation must become action, and action changes everything. Perhaps you've experienced this before. Maybe there was a time when you felt nervous about something new. A new job, a new city, a new responsibility. At first, it felt overwhelming. You questioned yourself. You doubted yourself. You wondered if you were ready. But somehow you adapted. You learned. You grew. And one day, what once felt difficult became normal. Many people have experienced this, and it teaches us something important. Human beings are often more capable than they realize, but they rarely discover that capability while standing still. Now imagine a bird preparing to leave its nest. If it waits until fear completely disappears, it may never fly. At some point, it must trust its wings. The same idea appears throughout life. There are moments when we need more preparation, and there are moments when we simply need to begin. Wisdom is knowing the difference. Now think about your own life. What have you been postponing? What dream have you been keeping on hold? What would happen if you took one small step today? Not a giant leap, just one step. Because meaningful journeys rarely begin with certainty. They begin with movement. Now let's step back for a moment. This message is not about rushing. It is not about acting recklessly. It is about understanding that complete readiness is often an illusion. In the next part, we'll explore why waiting feels safer than starting. Why fear keeps so many people standing still. And why some of the most important opportunities in life appear only after we take the first step. Because in the end, the perfect time rarely arrives. But every day offers a chance to begin. Part 2. Why waiting feels safer than starting. Waiting feels safe. Starting feels uncertain. That's why so many people wait. And why so few people begin. But sometimes the safest choice today becomes the biggest regret tomorrow. Take a moment and think about this honestly. Have you ever delayed something important because you didn't feel ready? Maybe you told yourself you needed more time, more knowledge, more confidence, more experience. At first, that seems completely reasonable. And sometimes it is. But sometimes waiting becomes a habit, a very comfortable habit. Now let's explore why. One reason people wait is because waiting protects them from failure. Think about that. As long as a dream remains a dream, it cannot fail. As long as a plan remains a plan, it cannot go wrong. As long as a goal remains in the future, it cannot disappoint us. Waiting protects possibilities, but it also prevents progress. Imagine a painter staring at a blank canvas. As long as the first brushstroke is never made, the painting remains perfect in their imagination. There are no mistakes, no imperfections, no criticism, but there is also no painting. This is one of the hidden costs of waiting. We protect the dream so carefully that we never give it a chance to become real. Now imagine two gardeners. Both receive the same packet of seeds. The first gardener waits for perfect weather, perfect soil, perfect conditions. The second gardener plants the seeds and begins learning along the way. A few months later, one gardener has experience. The other still has a packet of seeds. The difference was not knowledge. The difference was action. Now here's something important. Fear often disguises itself as preparation. This happens more often than people realize. We tell ourselves we're being responsible. We're researching, planning, preparing. And sometimes that's true. But sometimes fear is quietly hiding behind those activities. Because preparation feels productive. Waiting feels safe. And both can delay the moment of action. Perhaps you've experienced this before. Maybe you've spent hours planning something, days thinking about it, weeks imagining it. Yet somehow the first step never arrived. Many people know exactly what that feels like. It's part of being human. We naturally move towards certainty and away from uncertainty. But growth asks us to do the opposite. Growth asks us to take a step before everything feels clear. Now imagine standing on a beach before sunrise. The horizon is dark. You cannot see very far ahead. But as you begin walking, the light slowly appears. Step by step, more of the path becomes visible. Life often works the same way. We don't always receive clarity before movement. Sometimes movement creates clarity. Now let's go a little deeper. Many people think successful people are simply more confident, but often they are not. They simply have a different relationship with uncertainty. Instead of asking, "What if this goes wrong?" they ask, "What might happen if I never begin?" That's a powerful question, because every decision has a cost. Starting has a cost, but waiting has a cost too. And sometimes the cost of waiting is invisible. Years pass. Opportunities pass. Growth is postponed. Potential remains unexplored. Not because someone failed, because someone never started. Now imagine two climbers standing at the base of a mountain. The first climber keeps studying maps, analyzing routes, checking the weather. The second climber studies too, but eventually begins the ascent. Neither climber knows exactly what will happen. Neither climber has complete certainty, but only one is moving toward the summit. This doesn't mean preparation is unimportant. Preparation matters. The problem begins when preparation becomes a substitute for action. Because no amount of preparation can replace experience. Some lessons only appear while climbing. Now here's something deeper. People often underestimate how adaptable they are. Think about all the things you've already learned in life. Walking, speaking, making friends, working, solving problems. At one point, all of those things were unfamiliar. At one point, you had no experience, yet somehow you learned. You adjusted. You improved. Human beings are remarkably adaptable, but we only discover that adaptability through action, not through waiting. Imagine a river flowing around rocks. The river doesn't stop and demand perfect conditions. It keeps moving. It adjusts. It finds a way forward. Over time, that movement shapes the landscape itself. There is something powerful in that image. Progress is not always about certainty. Sometimes it is simply about continuing to move. Now think about your own life. Is there something you've been waiting to begin? Something you've been telling yourself you'll start someday? What if someday is much closer than you think? What if the first step is smaller than you imagine? These questions matter because many opportunities don't appear before we begin. They appear because we begin. Now let's step back for a moment. This message is not about eliminating fear. Fear is a natural part of growth. The goal is not to feel fearless. The goal is to move even when uncertainty is present. In the final part, we'll explore how small beginnings create remarkable futures, why action builds confidence better than waiting ever can, and why some of the most meaningful journeys in life begin long before we feel fully ready. Because in the end, readiness is often not the starting point. It's the result of starting. Part 3. The first step changes everything. You don't need to see the entire path. You only need enough courage to take the next step. Because many of life's greatest journeys begin before we feel ready. And often, that's exactly how they're supposed to begin. Take a moment and imagine yourself 1 year from today. Imagine looking back at this moment, at the things you wanted to do, the goals you wanted to pursue, the changes you hoped to make. Now ask yourself a simple question. What will matter more? The time you spent preparing? Or the steps you actually took? Because at some point, every meaningful journey asks the same thing. Will you stay where you are? Or will you begin? Now let's continue. One of the most surprising truths about life is that small beginnings often create remarkable outcomes. But when we look at successful people, we usually see the result. We see the tree, not the seed. We see the destination, not the first step. We see the confidence, not the uncertainty that came before it. This can make us forget something important. Every expert was once a beginner. Every confident person was once uncertain. Every journey started with a first step. Now imagine 2 acorns lying on the ground. One remains exactly where it is, safe, protected, unchanged. The other begins to grow. Growth is not easy. It faces wind, rain, changing seasons. But year after year, it becomes stronger. Eventually, it becomes a tree. The difference was not potential. Both acorns had potential. The difference was growth, and growth required movement. Now here's something important. Action teaches lessons that thinking alone cannot teach. Think about learning to swim. You can read books about swimming, watch videos, study techniques, understand the theory. But eventually, the water teaches lessons that books cannot. Life is full of experiences like that. Some wisdom only arrives through action. Some confidence only arrives through experience. Some opportunities only appear after we begin. This is why starting matters so much. Not because the first step changes everything immediately, but because it changes what becomes possible. Now imagine a person standing in front of a closed door. From where they stand, they cannot see what is on the other side. They can imagine. They can speculate. They can worry. But they cannot know. The only way to discover what lies beyond the door is to open it. Many opportunities in life work exactly the same way. They reveal themselves only after we move toward them. Now let's go a little deeper. Many people believe they need confidence before they act. But perhaps confidence is something different. Perhaps confidence is simply evidence. Evidence that you've faced challenges before. Evidence that you've adapted before. Evidence that you've grown before. And where does that evidence come from? It comes from experience. It comes from trying. It comes from beginning. That's why action builds confidence in a way that waiting never can. Now imagine two people learning to play the piano. The first person waits until they feel talented. The second person practices a little each day. At first, neither sounds very good. But months later, one person has developed a skill. The other is still waiting for confidence to arrive. The lesson is simple. Progress often comes before confidence, not after it. Now here's something deeper. Many of life's biggest opportunities arrive disguised as uncertainty. Think about that. A new career, a new relationship, a new challenge, a new dream. None of these come with guarantees. None of these arrive with complete certainty. If they did, they wouldn't require courage. But courage has never been the absence of uncertainty. Courage is moving forward despite it. And some of the most meaningful experiences in life begin there. Now imagine a sunrise. The sky doesn't become bright all at once. It changes gradually. A little more light, a little more clarity, a little more visibility. The future often unfolds the same way, not all at once, but step by step. This is why the first step matters, because it invites the next one, and the next one after that. Now think about your own life. What have you been waiting to begin? What opportunity have you been standing beside? What dream has been waiting patiently in the background of your life? And what might happen if you took one small step today? Not tomorrow, not someday, today. Because meaningful change rarely begins with giant leaps. It usually begins with small acts of courage repeated over time. Now let's step back for a moment. This message is not about being fearless. It's not about having all the answers. It's not about knowing exactly what will happen next. It's about trusting that growth often comes after we begin, not before. Now here's the final thought. Perhaps the perfect moment you've been waiting for does not exist. Perhaps confidence is not something you find. Perhaps it's something you build. One step, one lesson, one experience at a time. Before we finish, I'd like to leave you with a simple question. A year from now, will you be grateful that you waited? Or grateful that you started? Because in the end, the people who grow the most are not always the people who feel ready. They are often the people who begin anyway. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Keep learning, keep growing, and when the moment comes, don't be afraid to take the first step. And see you in the next story.